We talked about race a little bit earlier, Debbie, and when you were competing, you were really a role model for so many in the Black community. And Scott Hamilton wrote about this in his book, Landing It. And I'm just going to read a part of his book that he wrote about. He said, on tour, Debbie was extremely unhappy. I always felt that the pressure of being the first African American to win a national and world title was too much of a burden for her to shoulder. The expectations placed on her may have been unreasonable. She was a unique symbol of hope, a role model, and seemed to have the world at her fingertips, yet deep down I think all she wanted to do was skate, go to school, and live her life in privacy. I don't think she was cut out for the public eye, or at least for what some people had in mind for her. Defending a national title is stressful enough without the added strain of being a paragon of your race. Debbie was a terrific athlete and with a wonderful sense of humor, but I sensed a sadness inside, and it all came to a head during her second year on tour. So what was that experience like, your second year on tour, and do you agree with what Scott wrote?
Well, I don't agree with them, but I mean, it's always interesting to hear what people think is going on in your mind. I mean, that actually never bothered me. I mean, none of that stuff ever bothered me. I mean, what was hard for me is I actually never really pictured myself as a professional skater, and didn't think that I would actually ever enjoy it. And that's just me having a preconceived notion. I was like, I'm supposed to be going to medical school. And what ended up happening is, with all of what I was doing, the MCAT was coming up, and I was like, I'm not going to be ready to take it. And it was offered like twice a year or something like that. So when I finally took it, I was going to have to wait like another whole year before I could start medical school. So I was like, now what do? I guess I'm going to skate pro like on this tour. And I mean, the first 3 years that I did Stars on Ice, I wasn't really part of the show. I was like a guest star that would, I'd go to school during the week, and on a Friday I'd get a red-eye flight to wherever podunk town we were playing, and Butte, Montana or whatever. And I would do the show, and then I'd fly back home. So I wasn't really in the group numbers, and I just didn't feel like I fit in. It didn't have anything to do with, what other people thought of me. I mean, that never really bothered me, but I just always felt like I didn't fit in. They had this show, they were on tour, they were all close, and I was kind of this outsider. And, and I had a bad attitude back then, because I was just like, I'm going to do my school and blah, blah, blah. And what ended up happening when it came to a head was, I showed up for rehearsal, and I just really, like I said, did not feel like I fit in. And I'm a perfectionist, and I have the ability to throw a temper tantrum if I'm not doing as good as I think I should be doing. And so it was just kind of all these things. And, we had this rehearsal where I couldn't get this dance step right, and it wasn't like everybody else was getting it right either, but for whatever reason, I decided to throw a fit, and, the choreographer yelled at me, and I got mad, and I'm like, I don't need you people, I'm going to be a doctor, and stormed out of the rink, and it's like on a Friday. So we didn't rehearse on Saturday and Sunday. So there was like a weekend for this to fester. So then I'm kind of thinking, well, you probably look kind of foolish. I do. Now I got to go back with my tail between my legs on Monday. And, and I'm a big procrastinator. So, one of my girlfriends was actually out there with me, and I was like, man, what am I going to do? I can't start med school now. I have nothing to do. I have to do this show. I need the money to pay for med school. And so I ended up showing up for rehearsal late because I just really didn't want to go. I just kept going, gosh, I don't want to go. And I finally show up late, and they're running the opening number, and I'm kind of trying to sneak in and start doing my part. And Kitty and Peter Carruthers crashed while we were doing this opening number. And, Karen Kresge was like, are you guys okay? And Peter was like, well, if people would show up to rehearsal and not be
no,
blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and I'm like, what? And Scott, this is why he wrote this about this. But the other part that he said wasn't really it. But he came over and he's like, where nobody expects you to be perfect. We just expect you to, put in the effort and try to have fun, try to enjoy it. And from that moment on, my whole attitude changed, and I had a blast. I had the best skating year of my life, and really found out that I could be a professional skater and do all these things that I didn't think I could do. And I had a ball, and it was a great way to sort of end, my skating career. And I vowed I was never going to come back, and then I came back. Oh, so never say never.
Right.
So as your time as a skater, I think so many of your competitors are really known for things. Midori Ito was known for being that groundbreaking jumper. Katarina Witt was, very theatrical on the ice. What do you think that your strength was?
That I didn't have any one particular strength. No, I mean, I was a well-rounded skater, I think. I think I was known for sort of pulling programs out of nowhere because Karen Kadavi, and we're good friends. I love Karen, and she's such a great skater. But she always suffered with nerves. She was a beautiful skater, and she'd skate great on practice, and she would struggle with the nerves, and she would always draw to skate right after me. And I would skate terrible, like all week long. I'd miss everything, and Carla Fossey's thinking, we got this, right? And then I would go out there, and somehow I would pull this program out, and then, the audience was going, wah, wah, and poor Karen had to skate after that, and she would get so mad. She's like, I hate skating after you. And, and I always hated that for her because, she's actually one of my favorite. She and Jill Trenny are actually two of my favorite skaters, and they were my competitors. But, Jill was just always so powerful, and Karen was just beautiful, and she had that triple loop that was just like, it was just, everybody loves it. And we're all, we're friends to this day. And but I always felt bad for her because the one thing that I was known for was pulling a program out of nowhere. They were like, how did she do that? She wasn't ready. She didn't train. That's not fair. But it's a psychological game. I mean, I try to teach my son about sports psychology because, and I don't know if you can teach it. I mean, he has a lot of talent, and he has a lot of genetics that make him strong, and but trying to get his head right has been a challenge. I'm like, Luke, you can't go in there passive, and you can't go in there thinking you're going to fail. I mean, you pretty much have to convince yourself that this is going to have a great outcome no matter what. No matter how you feel inside, you have to have this positive attitude. And that was something that I was able to do. I was strong with figures as well because I had this ability to just get within myself. Sometimes I could I did better actually when nobody was around. I could just do figures for hours and hours and hours and concentrate on it and just get lost in it. And usually I could run my program when nobody was around. If my coach wasn't around, I could nail the program. I actually would get more stressed out when he was watching, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't do it because we'd go to head about this and that and the other. And one of the things he didn't ever understand about me was that going to head was what actually made me a good skater. I mean, if I had been more passive and I probably would not have succeeded. I'm just a very headstrong. I'm an Aries, so I'm like that ram. I go in head first, ask questions later. Sometimes you have to look back and say, well, maybe that wasn't exactly the best thing. But I always think about things, and I always, I don't have regrets about things that I do. I kind of decide, is this something that you can live with? And I decide, yeah, that is. It may have consequences. I mean, I've gone through this in the medical field where you stand up for things that are right, but it doesn't always, even though it's the right thing, it doesn't always turn out to be a good outcome for me or for the patient or for whatever. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've always done things that have helped the patient, but you would be surprised at, you know, the healthcare field isn't really designed to actually help the patient, and that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. And you know, with everything that you do in life, you just kind of have to look at, you know, are you willing to suffer the consequences of your actions? And I always kind of look at it as, well, I always try to do the right thing because I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror, you know, at the end of the day and feel comfortable that I did the right thing. Now, it may cost me, I may lose everything, but I'm a strong enough person that I can live with that. Not everybody can live with that, so.
I agree. And you talk in your answer about being close friends with Karen. You also said that you were friends with Jill and Tiffany, your other U.S. competitors. And I am.
Actually, Tiffany, she's like my third. I mean, really, my favorite skaters were the people that I competed with. It's really
yeah, I think that's amazing because when I was skating, I would have these fake relationships with my competitors where I'd go to a competition and I liked them, but I always felt like you shouldn't get too close to them because you're always going for the same prize. So how are you able to have such close relationships with them? And do you think that skaters can really be good friends with their close competitors?
I think you can. I mean, it really kind of depends on the person. I mean, you know, if you're just in it because you just want to win no matter what, and you know the kind of people that I'm talking about, you know, you're never going to be able to do that. But I mean, you know, Jill and I got very close, especially, you know, after I retired and she stayed in. You know, I mean, I think at the Olympics, it was almost harder on Jill than me because I didn't skate well, and I can remember her afterwards coming up to me and she's like, Dad, and I was like, I don't know what happened either, but you know, but when she won in '87, she actually came up and apologized to me, and I'm like, why are you apologizing for? You skated awesome, and you know, I didn't skate so great, and you know, even if I had skated great, you know, it still would have been close. And you know, I always believe that, you know, if you win because somebody else messed up or because you sabotage something, you know, what's the good in that? You know, big deal if you won under those circumstances. Now, if everybody went out and did their best and you won, that's really something to think about. But, you know, I always try to tell my son and anybody that, you know, asks me advice about sports, you have to be happy with yourself if you did your best. You know, that's what you're going out there to do. You can't, you know, the outcome is, you know, you got judges to deal with, you've got differing opinions, you know, differing styles. You know, sometimes you're comparing apples to oranges when you're comparing skaters. They're both great, but, you know, one has this and one has that. And, you know, as an athlete, you just have to be happy if you went out there and did your very best. Even if you didn't win, that's still great. And I, you know, I mean, I remember when Kitty and Peter Carruthers won the silver in the Olympics, and everybody thought they should have won. And I remember Peter going, who cares about the marks? We just skated the program of our life. And, you know, the biggest disappointment for me at the Olympics was not skating the performance of my life. That's why I got all down on myself, because I had built it up in my mind that, you know, this Olympics is, you know, you're only going to go one time, and, you know, I want this to be the ultimate. And maybe that was too big of expectations, but that's what I wanted. That was what my goal was. It wasn't necessarily to win the gold. It was, I want to skate the performance of my life. And when that, you know, when I two-footed that stupid triple, I was like, ugh, I can't do it now. And it was really hard on me. I mean, it was hard on me emotionally because I wanted that so badly.
I guess what's interesting is when I was going back watching all of your old tapes, you were a pretty consistent competitor, but you would have, usually in your long program, maybe one or two minor errors. You'd two-footed jump or you'd step out.
I know.
Yeah, but the overall performance was really good. No, but I'm wondering, what is it, do you think, about the Olympics that created that mindset that you had to be perfect? Because I think the mistake
because I had never done it before. It's just like you said, I always miss something. I'd either start out great and goof something up at the end, or I'd goof something up at the beginning and I'd, you know, finish strong. I wanted to get a 6.0. I really wanted to skate perfect. I mean, and I realized I was getting to the end of my skating career, and it's like, if you don't do it soon, it's not going to happen. And I never got a 6 because I would always fut something up, and Peggy Fleming would say, she 2-footed that or whatever. But, you know, so I was like very good at being not quite perfect.
Yeah, but do you think that was really one of the downfalls of Calgary in your long program is going in with that mindset? If you could do it again, would you have changed that? Because the mistake you made on the triple, had you then gone and skated clean program, you probably would have won.
Probably, but I don't know if I would have changed the goal. I would have changed how I approached it. I wouldn't have got all passive. I would have gotten much more aggressive, and I would have understood that you need to nail that darn triple. You've done it in your sleep. You know, I mean, that morning that I was on practice, I could not miss a jump. I mean, I barely warmed up and I couldn't miss a jump. I've never been in that situation, and what ended up happening is I just got, you know, too relaxed, I think, because I thought, well, maybe your body is going to just do this. And I learned a very important lesson. It doesn't matter how trained you are, if you don't have your head right, it's not going to happen. I mean, you really have to be focused. You really have to be determined. And, you know, I mean, I love football, and when I watch teams play, you know, you can see who's got their mindset right and who doesn't, you know, and once you get into the head of that competitor, you know, they start to make mistake after mistake after mistake, and they just fall apart. And I mean, my son, I saw him with baseball and any kind of team sports where, you know, and I would try to explain to Luke, I'm like, you know, you guys have to start out strong. You don't want to be coming from behind, because when, you know, psychologically it's very, you know, it's like 10 times more difficult to overcome, you know, when you have to come from behind rather than when when you're just on that high. So, you know, it's extremely important in sports. And, you know, for people to take that psychological side for granted and not really understand that, you know, sports is probably 95% psychological. I mean, yeah, you've got to have the talent. Yeah, you've got to have the training, but it's mostly psychological, you know, after all that.
You know, you were obviously a very successful competitor on the ice.
Hold on. A creditor is calling me on my phone.
Oh.
I had to cut them off.
Okay.
You know, Jamie was standing over there. He wants me to teach his boys that attitude. It's interesting.
It's good.
His little one is already like that. You know, I mean, the two boys are just very different personalities. And my son is a very different personality. I used to feel bad because I would just be like, you know, this just do it and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be getting in his face. And I realized that he was just a different kind of personality. And I learned how to actually bring out the best in him. And it wasn't the same way that I would bring it out in me. So, you know, as coaches that, you know, that try to treat all of their students the same way, they're going to fail with some of them because they don't know how to get into the head of that athlete. And you do have to kind of figure out what makes each one tick, and what, you know, some people don't do well with the go out there and, you know, and getting yelled at. They don't do well with that. Some people need, you know, a little more encouragement or a little more patting them on the back, so to speak. And, I'm just like, Luke, will you just do it? Just figure it out. Just do it, you know, because I was the kind of kid that would just, you know, I didn't need anybody to tell me how to do it. I would just figure it out myself. And Jamie's two kids are just opposite. You know, the little one, you know, you have to watch him. He'll be like building this complex thing, you know, and using an ice pick and a knife. And you're like, you're 5, don't. That's what I mean, you know. So, but the older one, you know, he likes to sit in front of the computer, and he's a little more, you know, emotional. And, you know, we were doing homework the other night, and I'm like, I've explained this to you for 2 hours. You should get it by now. And I felt bad because he was like, just help me. I'm like, if I tell you what to write, then you're not going to understand it. So I have to go, okay, honey, I love you. So yeah, I have, and it's hard. That's not my normal personality, so I do have to, be flexible.
Now, you obviously won a lot, and I think it's difficult for many people to imagine someone at the elite level who really, when they give that answer that they want to skate their best, really did want to skate their best. How badly did you want to win when you were competing?
I don't know. I don't really ever remember. I mean, you want to win, but like I said, I wasn't the kind of person that would sit there going fall, fall, to your I just never felt that way. And I don't know why. I don't know why I'm like that. I just, I'm a realist. It's like you can only do your best. You can't do better than your best. Now, you can make your best be better by practicing and I tend to be hard on myself, and sometimes people don't understand that. Like, I'll put myself down all the time, and people are like, but you made it to the Olympics, and I'm like, I don't care. I mean, it wasn't about making it to the Olympics. It was about doing the best that I can do. And once you've done your best, then you want to see, well, can I do better than that? I mean, I'm always trying to figure out a way to do something better. And, a lot of people don't understand that. They're very happy and content with, well, I did pretty good. Didn't I do good? Didn't I do good? And I never was that kind of personality. I wasn't really looking for praise. I wasn't really looking for, I don't know what the word would be, but just, being content. I always, people that are driven are just always driven. You can't take that out of them. But it's hard when you're a driven person because everybody around you is not as driven as you are, and it frustrates you. You're like, well, come on. and it's very hard.
You talk about being a realist. Do you think that Katarina just wanted to win more than you did? You wanted to do your best. Do you think that she wanted to win?
Katarina at that Olympics, and I mean, I have so much respect for Katarina Witt because it's very hard to one-up her. I mean, it's very hard, and I've told the story in the past about where we were in this show in Italy, and neither one of us was in any kind of good shape, and we weren't even really doing triples. And the first show, I was like, well, I'm going to eke out a double axel. And, because she was Olympic champion, she got to skate after me. So she got to see what I would do. And then if I did one double axel, then she was going to do two. And so, in the next show, I'm like, I'm going to do a triple toe. And I'm like all happy, I did a triple toe. And then she comes out and she's going to do two, So I'm like, gosh, but I always admired her for that. I mean, that's a competitor I don't know if it was necessarily that she wanted to win, but she wanted to show she's the best. And, at the Olympics, she actually really didn't think she was going to win, because I can actually remember walking out of the Olympic Village. I was maybe, 20 yards or whatever behind her. And somebody stopped her to wish her luck for the free program. And she actually was kind of like, well, yeah, I'm going to need it. Which I've never really seen Katarina Witt be in that kind of a, frame of mind. And she could have skated better than she did. She skated well, she skated clean, but she probably could have skated, she skated a little conservatively. Everybody said, oh, that was conservative. And, she really gave me an opportunity. She opened a door. I didn't go through it. I had my own issues because I wanted this perfect program, and I wasn't competing with Katarina Witt. I was competing with Debi Thomas, and I lost to Debi Thomas's, loss of focus is what really happened. And, a lot of people have their philosophy on what, they think, oh, Debi Thomas gave into the nerves, or, oh, she gave into this. And it wasn't really nerves. I mean, I always did better when I was nervous. I don't think I was nervous enough at the Olympics. And, it's always interesting because you all have told me a couple of stories that, people's philosophies on what I'm thinking. if there's
People
one
do
thing
have
that
a lot of philosophies on you. They really do.
They're
You
not
know?
wrong. That's how I'm going to write my book finally. Someday I will write this book.
Can't
But now
wait.
there's just so much more to tell. But yeah, if there's one thing that makes me madder than anything, and Jamie will even tell you this, is people telling me what I think. I'm like, you can't tell me what I think or what I know or how things work. I was there. I lived that program. I won't even watch my Olympic program because I was there. I know what happened. I know what was going through my mind. And it's not something that I feel is positive, to relive. So I just choose not to. I really believe that positive thinking is very important for success. And, I've gone through, some very tough times in the past, I don't know how many years, 10 years, obstacles that I've had to overcome and, and gotten to very negative places in my life and had to struggle through it. And I'm not, even though I'm an open person, if I'm doing badly, I'm not that open about it. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm like, I'll talk to everybody when I have it fixed. And, because, my first job after I was out of my fellowship, I had all these big expectations and I'm going to have this, total joint center of excellence and blah, blah, blah. And, and I got in with this hospital that just didn't see the vision. And, I had trained at this place where, we were doing outpatient total hip replacements and people, were doing great. And, and I was getting those results with patients, but it was like an obstacle every day. It was just always something, battle with, trying to get things done the way that I wanted them done because I was trying to watch out for my patients. And, and it came to a head and I ended up leaving and and they were not very nice to me after I left. And it probably had a lot to do with, we made a big deal that Debi Thomas was coming. And then after everything fell apart, we don't want everybody to know that, she wasn't happy with us. So, you would be kind of surprised what people, the lengths that people will go to try to, protect, what they think is a great image, even though, 8 doctors left in the time that I was there and I wasn't even there a year. So all of these things kind of are just things that people don't know. And I would like to write a book about a lot of these things because, I have a lot of friends or family that, they went to the doctor and they had this bad experience. And, me as a doctor, I can kind of understand a little bit the doctor, why the doctor did what they did, and sometimes, I see patients who have seen another orthopedic surgeon and they'll tell me what they did. And I'm thinking in my mind, well, that's what I would have done. But it's sort of like the delivery, if you didn't have a connection or you didn't make that patient feel comfortable with what you were explaining or what they needed to do, they won't have a good outcome. And, we were talking about expectations. I had this big expectation for my Olympics. Well, the same thing happens with patients. They have an expectation. When I was doing my fellowship, we had a patient come in about 6 weeks after his total hip replacement. And you'll like this because it has a skating theme to it. But he came in and he said, Dr. Long told me I could go back to power yoga. And I'm, really? I said, what did that entail exactly? And the guy sat down on the floor and he took his other leg and he lifted up over his neck.
Oh, wow.
Like, well, I said, I don't know that I can guarantee that your hip will be able to stay in socket if you do that. And his face was like, ugh, like I had told him, giving him a death wish. And I said, well, you're going to be able to do a lot of things, but we can't test that position on the operating table to see if it's going to be safe for you. And he was like, oh, well, maybe I should have gotten a surface replacement. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And I said, getting a surface replacement probably wouldn't have, help that situation. And then I quickly, I said, well, Rudy Galindo has a total hip replacement. And the guy went, really? And he got all excited. So I was like, phew, I got something to get back on track. And but I realized from that day, I was like, gosh, I need to ask these patients what they're expecting out of this surgery. If their expectations are too high and I can't meet them, they're not going to have a good outcome. So I give patients like 3 wishes and try to find out what it is that they're wanting to accomplish with their surgery. And that way we can talk about it, and, I can give them a realistic goal for when they might meet that goal, or whether it's realistic at all. But yeah, it was an interesting, story, and it was just kind of funny because, and it's interesting because these hips that are going bad in skating. I don't know if you guys saw my website. It wasn't a website. It was a Facebook page back around the Vancouver Olympics. It was called Fans for Downgrading Grabbing Your Skate.
I didn't see it. No, but that sounds great.
Oh, it's probably still on there. I mean, but I was staying with these people that didn't really know skating, and they're like, why do they keep grabbing their skate? And I was like, well, they didn't used to do that.
Right. It's a new code of points. Yeah.
Right. So, we made this site and we just totally made fun of it. People posted the most ridiculous positions and everything. And, but, it's actually a serious thing because some of these girls are really getting bad hip problems. And I mean, they're having to have hip replacements at a young age because, the hip wasn't made to be able to go to that extreme. The neck of the femur is going to hit the socket, and the head's going to start to sublux out, and so they're getting early arthritis, they're getting labral tears, they're getting hip instability. And my friend just sent me a message about Alyssa Cisney's got this hip, and they do need to do something about it. I'm more or less a hip specialist, but I mean, these things like labral tear repairs and things like that are still in experimental stages. They weren't meant to be done in high-level athletes who are going to be pushing those hips to extremes. So I do worry about those things because people don't really understand the consequences of it. And, as far as safety in sports and things like that, there are some things that, if you really don't understand these injuries and you don't understand anatomy and things like that, we've got kids out there, really putting themselves at risk by continuing to do that.
Can you come back from a labral tear? I know that, so many skaters, Jenny had a big hip problem, when she was skating. Tara Lipinski had major hip problems. So can the skaters come back from that? I know John Collin, who's the national champion in pairs, can't compete this year because he has a hip problem and is trying to compete at Worlds in like a couple of months, and people are not really sure if that's even safe.
I mean, nobody knows because it just wasn't, there people weren't doing that, 10 years ago. But, I mean, the labrum is a really thin little piece of cartilage. It's kind of like a meniscus in a knee, but not as, not as stable. I mean, the hip is a ball and socket joint, but like I said, once you get that neck of the femur beyond where it's supposed to go, it's going to start levering the head out. And if you tear that labrum, I mean, yeah, you can try to repair it, but cartilage doesn't heal well. I mean, usually it doesn't have a good blood supply. And if it does heal, it heals with kind of a scar tissue. It's not normal tissue. It's not as strong. It's not as resilient as the natural hip. So, I mean, if you're thinking that you're going to be able to do high impact, jumping, landing, extreme flexibility maneuvers, it's probably, I don't know that you can come back from that. I mean, every case is individualized. It kind of depends on where the tear is, how big it is, all those kind of things. But, I don't want to say, no, you could never recover from it. But the reality, I mean, I go in and I yank that labrum out when I'm putting a total hip in. It's this wimpy little thing. It's not like something that's got a lot of, substance to it. So, when I read something like that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that could be, career ending, and there are people that put total hips in, but, you can't do triples, with that kind of impact over and over and over with a total hip replacement. I mean, it's not gonna be able to withstand that, likely. I mean, you might be able to skate pro like Rudy, but to compete at a world level, probably not.
Now, how
So
much
those
do
are
you think?
things thinking about.
In a previous interview, I heard that you said that you don't think that skaters need to train triples as many hours a day as they actually do because of the physical impact. So how much do you think skaters should be training on the ice, and what is a safe amount of training?
Well, when they got rid of figures, that really kind of, put people more at risk because, when I was skating 6 hours a day, 4 of those hours was on figures. It wasn't like I'm jumping and spinning 6 hours a day. I mean, I think you still need to limit the amount of jumps that you do. I mean, I didn't like to jump a whole lot, because after I did about 3 of one jump, the technique would start to change and I'd mess it up. So, unless I was learning a new jump or something like that, when I'd warm up, I would do 1 or 2 of each jump and then run the program, and and then spend the rest of your time either working on choreography, and I did a lot of off ice training to try to keep my flexibility and strength up. So I did pretty well, avoiding injuries. The worst injury I had was when I had Achilles tendonitis in both ankles in '87, and that was kind of me. I worked with this trainer that was a no pain no gain kind of person, and ended up tearing everything. And I just kind of learned that maybe less is more. I mean, that you need to be trained, but you don't want to overdo it. The body, can only take so much. So, I think that a lot of these people really should do more psychological training, because, mental imagery, the brain is basically sending the same impulse when you're doing a visualization. And it's kind of a miraculous thing when you kind of come out there and you're like, wow, I visualized this and now I'm doing it. So it's something that I think they don't do enough psych training for athletes.
When you talk about training, Debbie, you spoke of earlier that you would stop your program if you missed your opening combination before the Olympics. Why would you do that? And follow up on that, did you think you needed a triple at the Olympics to beat Katarina after you lost your world title the year before?
I don't know. I mean, I will probably say yes, because we were too closely matched. I mean, for me to she was already like 3-time world champion or whatever. So if you're going to dethrone somebody who's already a 3-time world champion, you've got to outskate them by more than just a little bit. And the triple, I mean, it's funny because I didn't know that I was like the first American to do a triple. Somebody asked me that question, and I'm like, they were like, I'm like, really? And now I see like people doing triplets, triple toe, like it's nothing. And I'm like, man, but, that was a good combo. I mean, when you hit that first triple very fast, it wasn't that hard to do the second triple. I mean, I think I had more trouble with it from a psychological standpoint than I did from a physical standpoint. And
why
I can
is
remember,
that?
well, I just, because you would put so much on it, I mean, it was like, oh, the triple, and it's funny because right before the Olympics, I was having a hard time hitting it, and I would stop the program, and, Mr. McGowan would get all mad at me for stopping the program until I landed it. But George De La Pena, who was doing my choreography, came out to work with me before the Olympics. And he said, well, let's see the program. And I said, well, I've been having a hard time with the triple triple. I was like, do you want me to just do a triple double so I don't mess up the flow of the program? And, here's this ballet guy. He's like, no. He's like, I want to see the triple triple. And he's like, listen. He's like, don't stress out about it so much. He's like, here's what you need to do. You need to go into that triple triple like you are a tigress. And right before you do it, I want you to smile as if you're going to eat it alive. Boom, landed it, no problem. So, here's somebody who is not a skating coach, doesn't know anything about how to do a triple triple, whatever, but was able to put the right seed in my head. And that's why I know the Olympics just wasn't right, because it's just in your head, and interestingly, skating was so much harder as an amateur. Once I actually, and for the first 3 years that I skated pro, when I was just doing the show on the weekend, I mean, I would stress so much, and sometimes I just wouldn't even skate well at all. And interestingly, the year that I dedicated my full time to skating pro, I realized how much easier it was to skate. I mean, I had quick changes and skating in jeans and doing all these things that, a year before that, I would have thought, oh my gosh, that's so hard. And after you're doing it show after show, and, Brian Orster and I would go out drinking all night and still come back and I could hit everything, and I was like, why is this so much easier than it was when I had to, when I was training? And it was just because you got used to it. It was easy. And psychologically, I could just get myself in a frame of mind, and boom, I could land it. So, I just learned a lot just from experience, just from paying attention, just from realizing that your mind is really in control of everything that you do.
So when you look back on your Olympic experience, if you could go back and there was a skater in that position that you were in heading into the long program that night, what advice would you give them? Because it seems like a lot of what you're saying is psychological, that you have to attack. Is that what you would tell a skater who is about to go out and compete that night?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you need to get yourself, every athlete should learn how to do visualization. I mean, you should be able to visualize in your mind the perfect program, how you want it to be. Here in the audience, what?
I agree.
Jamie's over here, he's giving me notes, and I'm like, what? Huh? No. No, I mean, you really should, learn how to visualize vividly. I mean, if you can, it's not just seeing it, it's hearing it. It's hearing. I mean, when I won 87 or 86 nationals, I spent hours convincing myself that I could do that program. And I did. I heard the audience. I could feel how it was going to be. And when the actual event came, that's exactly what happened. And every athlete should learn how to do that. And you shouldn't be afraid of those nerves. I mean, one of the things that I learned in that course, and I can remember it to this day from, I was only 13 years old or 12 or something. But those butterflies that you get where you just feel like you're going to die?
Yeah.
They taught us to just say, to accept it. Yeah, I'm nervous. So is everybody else. But that doesn't mean I can't perform. That doesn't mean I can't nail this. I've done these things all before. I mean, in 86 nationals, I wasn't landing anything worth a darn all week long, but I kept telling myself, you've done all these jumps before. You've done every single one of them. Just take them one at a time and just do it like you're just doing that jump. And that's what really got me through it. And once you kind of break it down and simplify it, the fear of what you're doing, it kind of goes away. It gives you that confidence that you can do it. And, when I was skating in the show, I got to this point of where I knew it was just a feeling, like right before my triple sow cow that I would do at the opening of that Oh Darling number, I just had a feeling, and before I even took off, I knew I was going to land it. And I think back to all the triple sow cows that I two-footed as an amateur. the one that used to kill me was when I was doing Carmen. I was supposed to do triple sow, double toe to, and I would think so much about trying to do it on the music, I'd mess it up every time. I'd either chicken out or miss it or whatever. And I don't think I landed it all year. I think that was the one thing that I missed in every program. You know, I either chickened out or missed it or something. And it was a psychological thing. And then I think about all of the shows that I did with Stars on Ice and hit that triple sow like it was nothing. You're thinking, what the heck? You know, I wish I'd have knew then what I know now. And you'll spend the rest of your life telling, you know, saying, if I knew then what I know now, things would be different. I mean, it's just, that's how life is.
So we've had some technical issues. Thank you for sticking with us, Debbie. But we always end our interviews with just saying a bunch of skaters' names, and we want to know the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this person's name, okay?
Okay.
Ready for it? So we're going to start with Jill Trenery.
Oh, just great person, wonderful friend. I miss her. I haven't seen her in years, and if she ever hears that that I did this interview, she needs to contact me because I miss her.
Okay. Karen Kadavi.
Oh my gosh, bundle of energy. Totally fun. I love her. She makes me laugh. She makes me crack up. She's just so bouncy, and we have a ball.
Great. Kira Ivanova.
Kira Ivanova. Oh my gosh. I forgot she existed. Now that's not nice though. That didn't come out nice, but
Yeah.
she was always very serious. She was always nice to me. Very good with figures.
How about Dick Button?
What else can I say? Oh, I love Dick. A good old friend.
All right, I think we lost Dave, so I'm just going to finish him up here. Scott Hamilton.
Scott Hamilton, you know, I think of him as just wise and level-headed, and, you know, he's somebody that, you know, everybody, you know, I don't want to call him a father figure because, you know, he's too young to be my father, but, you know, as far as Stars on Ice, you know, he was always kind of the glue that held the show together.
Great. And Midori Ito.
Oh my gosh, what would I call her? She's just cute, you know, she's just cute. Cute and tough all in one thing, you know, I mean, just amazing also. The way she could jump, but she could also laugh at herself. I remember her laughing at her figure at Worlds one year. And, you know, just always very sweet.
How about Christopher Bowman?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, he could always make me laugh, and, you know, obviously it was very sad, his passing. I would say he was misunderstood. Obviously everybody knows he was a great talent, and you know, I always felt like if I could have coached Christopher, I could have, you know, I could have got him whipped into shape because I understood.
Take out that note, yeah.
Whole crazy, you know, whatever was going through his mind. You know, I think people tried to. It was like people tried to tame, you know, a wild beast, and you really just have to understand that wild beast and just let him do it his way. But he's very missed.
All right, and finally, Frick from Frick and Frack.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Frick, he's my idol. And he's missed too. I mean, I'll tell you a little story because I got to dance with Mr. Frick at the World Championships in Geneva when I won. They had the gala banquet at the end, and, you know, here's rubber-legged Mr. Frick dancing to Money for Nothing and Your Chicks for Free, you know. You know, and here I am getting to dance with my skating idol. So, you know, gosh, always just good memories, you know, remembering somebody from the time you were, you know, 4 years old till, you know, till adulthood. You know, he was always an admirer of mine, and, you know, when I started doing my comedy number, you know, he would send me ideas and things that I should do for for my comedy numbers. I thought that was cute.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. We miss Dave. He's not here, but you hung with us through all the technical issues, and it was so nice just going back and reliving your experiences with you and being so open. And, of course, seeing your life now, getting a glimpse of that, it was really fun. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for spending so much time.
We'd obviously like to thank Debi Thomas for all of her time and insight today. This was really a dream come true for Jenny and myself in many, many ways.
Yeah, Dave and I have been such huge Debbie fans over the years, and of course we were too young to watch her in 1988 and as she came up through the ranks throughout the 80s, but just going back and reliving that Calgary experience with her today was something really special, and I appreciate how honest she was, particularly about all the psychological component of the sport, because I think going into that, we don't hear a lot of skaters talk about that stuff, so I think by going into that, she's going to help a bunch of the current crop of skaters today.
Yeah, listening to Debbie talk about being mentally prepared for everything that you do in life and really being aggressive is something that I know that I've taken with myself after listening to her speak at other times. So we'd obviously like to thank all of you for tuning into the Skating Lesson podcast here today.
We'd also like to thank Kevin Kwasniewski for our graphics, and you can always find us on Twitter, twitter.com/skatinglesson. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/The Skating Lesson. And please join us next week again for another fun interview.
And as always, we'd like to remind you to hold an edge.
And look
sexy.
Bye, guys.